Hey you guys, welcome to another video of Tarot with me. It's pretty quiet right now, but I was thinking that I would start with apologizing for all of the background noise. I'm probably never gonna have like a soundproof room, and there's a lot of construction. You know, more people are moving to Costa Rica because it's the spot, it's the hot spot to move to. So there's a lot of construction going on, and there's no way for me to filter it out. I will be getting a microphone so that there won't be as much echo. So with that, thank you for just understanding that, you know, I'm doing what I can down here in Costa Rica, or up here, depending on where you are. I'm really excited about today because we will be looking into one of my favorite cards, which is the Fool. The number is 0. Now, because I have had a dog that was very dear to me, named Zero, he is the first thing I think of. So I'm filled with love and emotions for my dog, Zero. But on a numerology level, 0 is the fulcrum between the positive and the negative numbers. It is the balance, right? It is the circle with nothing in it. It's emptiness. If you put a dot in the middle, it becomes the self and the ego. You take that ego out, you take that dot out, and it becomes emptiness. It becomes the primordial void, the womb. Now, from the womb, we instantly think of a baby. Now, the baby is that symbol of there's nothing in the brain, right? Like completely void. It's brand new, clean slate, right? And when we look into a baby's eyes, we see everything. Through the nothingness, through the void, you see everything. The baby grows and becomes the child. The child embodies the Fool in that it is the innocent, still embodying, not really knowing everything, right? The archetype of the child, this Fool, just the archetype of it, doesn't quite understand the swing of the ups and downs of life, which is symbolized by the Wheel of Fortune. It is before, the child kind of symbolizes before time. There are a few quotes that I have looked up and written down, and I spent about 20 minutes meditating on where I wrote them down, but without Wi-Fi, I couldn't look it up. But there are Bible verses that talk about that you must be childlike to enter the gates of heaven. It's this whole idea of purity, of innocence. Now, that being said, I've noticed with my child specifically, and in my observation of children, that they definitely can be really mean and cruel. That this idea that they're these pure, innocent, beautiful flowers of the future is a bit one-sided. But it's an archetype, right? It's just the symbolism. Now, when my child, as a Gemini, she swings very heavily. When she embodies that really angry hatred, I want to be mean and spiteful, I do notice that it's coming from almost a playful state. Like she wants to play, she wants to act. She wants to just act mean. She doesn't really understand the concept of, if I am mean now, I will have consequences later. Which brings me around to the Fool and this card, and the archetype of the child represents the here and now. Remember when you were a child and the future didn't really exist. You don't worry about the future. It's just now. What you're doing now is the only thing that exists for you as a child, which frees you from a lot of worry and stress. This archetype lives in the root chakra, in the feeling of safety and security, the archetype. When damaged, this is what we're dealing with when we go into regressive therapy and working with the shadow. When our root chakra is damaged, we have to re-purify it. We have to heal it so that it becomes more like the archetype of the innocence and purity. Now, the other thing about the Fool and the symbolism of this card and archetype in tarot is that you see the child in the card carrying a bag. And what he's carrying are the tools of the magician, which we covered yesterday. The wand, the cup, the sword, and the pentacle. These are representations of the elements. So we blow all that away. What does it really mean? Okay, we as human beings, as children, possess earth, air, water, and fire. We're mostly made up of water. More than 50%, I think the number is like 75% water. The same percent as the earth is made up of water, right? Our bodies, our muscles, our skin, this is earth. The power that pumps our blood, that's in our heart, that pushes the blood around us, the spark of life is fire. And our lungs hold the air. We have to breathe the air. We have to bring it in to exist. Now, the Fool embodies the human that doesn't yet really understand or comprehend that they have this power. It's pre-understanding of this power. In a way, they're asleep to it, but that doesn't mean that you don't have it. Those tools are there, whether you acknowledge it or not. The tools of the magician are within you as the elements. Coming back to the zero and the elements and the void, I did want to say a really wonderful way to study this emptiness and the void is through Zen Buddhism. They got that void shit figured out beautifully. Now, this archetype, I also wanted to say, embodies not just the self, because you're also taking out that ego. It's the zero. There is no dot. There is no ego. So it's a connection with more like the collective consciousness of humanity being this inner child. We have to heal this collective consciousness. And it's this inner child embodies this vulnerability. Going back to not really, well, this vulnerability and purity, not yet being influenced by this or that. So I thought about the cards and what do the cards have to say. And it's funny because the first thing I thought was, I wonder if the card's going to show up, and it'll probably be like that throughout these card spreads. But I shuffle thinking about the Fool, thinking about all of these representations, this numerology, this emptiness, this childlike state of humanity. Center, north, south, east, west. The center card was 7 of Wands. Now, with the 7, I always think planets and chakras. That's, for me, and my numerology interpretation. I see 7. I see the mirror because I see the 7 chakras and the 7 planets. With this inner and outer 7 chakras, 7 planets, and I think of mirror combined with the inner child, instantly goes straight to Never-Ending Story. You have Atreyu on one side of the mirror, you have Bastian on the other. Now, in the movie, Bastian is an adorable, very good-looking boy. In the book, they describe Bastian as a fat, kind of not embodying any kind of cuteness, very shy, very timid boy. So you have, on both sides of the mirror, you have Atreyu, which is this, in the book, a green-skinned child warrior that's brave and strong and that has taken on this quest to save the world, basically, the hero. And you have, on the other side of the mirror, this fat little boy that's timid and self-conscious and feels like that he doesn't possess any of these qualities. And throughout the book, of course, they come together, which is what made me think. In the center, we have this concept. 2 sides of the child. We have this child that feels like they're the hero, and then we have this child that feels like everything will squash them. They're just little and worthless as a child. Now in tarot, this card also means strong belief and self-defense. So that came into my mind, and I was like, yeah, you know, we need to defend this little child, this inner child of ours, defending it in the center came to mind. And how, why do we need to defend it? Because society, even though the archetype in societal ideals, the child is revered as the future, they are our future. The way that society is built up, the society wants to kill the child. You don't have an imagination. You don't have freedom. You have to go to work. You have to keep your feet on the ground. You have to be real. There's no daydreaming. You have to work for a living. Kill that inner child. Seriously. So in the north, we have 7 of hearts, 7 of cups. And so all of a sudden there's another 7. So it's just a moving up into, with the heart, it's emotional. So cups, water is all about emotion. So when I read this card, I just saw that the reality of the 2 sides, the Gemini, which is really, you know, the sun went into Gemini today, and there's a lot of guys in Gemini right now. There's a big focus on Gemini. Hey, Gemini. And this duality is embodied by Gemini. And a child, it's the spring. Gemini is the 2 children, right? So in the center we have that. And it moves up into the north of 7 of hearts, of emotions. The emotional state, that over-emotion, that overreacting, that dramatization of a child. And in tarot, this is the card of choices. You have 7 cups that are full. You have this power before you, but you have to choose a path. And of course I realized that when you're a kid, it's all about, you know, what do you want to be? What do you want to do when you grow up? And realizing that yesterday we talked about how the question is, who am I? And why am I here? Maybe it was yesterday. Anyway, and now we have this question of, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And it is always laid out before a child, you know? Because the child dreams to be, you know, that child that wants to be the astronaut, you know? I can't ever remember. I do remember the adults telling me that I should be a veterinarian because I liked animals. I was really good with animals. Animals always. Story is, I had a white rabbit that was a pet named Sugar. And this rabbit was completely docile in my hands. If any of you have had a rabbit before, most people put them in a hutch. And rabbits are very skittish. It's not the ideal pet for a child. Even though society says that it is. Anyway, they are very skittish. They really don't like being held that much, you know. But Sugar, with me, I could hold him upside down like a baby. I dressed him in doll clothes. I went swimming with him. I brushed his teeth. And all of the adults were always like, oh, you should be a vet. You should be a vet. Oh, you like horses. You should be a vet. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a vet. I don't want to deal with sick animals. Vets always have to deal with sick animals. And I knew that from the get-go. I've got a very good friend that did go into the veterinary world. And there's no way I could have made that. That's harder than being a doctor. Seriously. So what do we have in the South? Moving along. In the South, I flip it over and it's the 5 of hearts. We've got hearts in the air and hearts below, but we have this number 5, which is Mars. So my interpretation is that we're being held by this emotional Mars. Mars is a very fiery, kinetic, masculine, pushing passion. And we have this in the South. For a child, oh my God. Yeah, Like, that is our childlike emotion when we explode into a tantrum. But when tamed and controlled, it pushes us to do what we want to do. You want to climb that tree over there. It is the force that forces you to climb that tree, and all of a sudden you're at the top and you're like, fucking yes, I did this. Remember that feeling as a kid? I fucking made this shit happen. In tarot, this card is the loss of something emotional. Because 5 is always placed to be kind of a negative number in the tarot, but you know, I always think about it and bring it into my mind, and I realize though that if your inner child is caged or trapped or damaged or unbalanced, you do lose a sense of pleasure, because that child, it has the imagination and it has that playfulness. The archetype embodies that joyful, childlike play. Usually it just needs to be healed. It just needs to be admired and looked at and taken care of. So, what's in the East? That's the next card, the East. And it's the Fool. I was like, yes, there you are. You did show up. And he showed up in a beautiful place in the East, coming up over the hill with the sun. And I see the Fool, the child, running up over the hill. He's been there before in many spreads. It's a great placement for the child. I really felt that. It was just a really powerful, the child is gonna come back and shed light on all of our souls. So, hop over to the West, and I flip it over, and it's the 8 of Swords, and I'm like, ugh. And then I get this sense of dread. 8 of Swords is being trapped. And in my deck, it also is the Devil. So all of a sudden, we have another major arcana come through, the Devil. And the Devil embodies the idea of being trapped, being chained. The whole concept and symbolism of hell is that it's a bad place that you can't get out of. You're trapped in it. And then I started realizing that this is actually quite Gemini and quite beautiful, in that we have the Fool rising as the sun, and the night, the Devil, the feeling of being trapped at night, the nightmares, right? And I really felt that child, that inner child, the collective consciousness of the world's, of humanity's inner child feeling trapped and squashed and killed. And, you know, it has no voice. It's helpless. It's been abused. It's been not taken seriously. It doesn't have a voice. It's just, you're just meant to get over that shit and grow the fuck up and get a job where it's just gonna, you know, kill it more. School was hell for me, personally. I liked the subjects, I liked learning, but school, I felt so trapped. And in high school, I skipped most of my classes. I was one of those kids. I was like, seriously. In PE, when we would be outside doing outside stuff, I would just like run off into the woods and stay there for at least a couple of classes. Feeling trapped in your family life. Oh my God. Should we go there? Just being like this, feeling like you're home and all of the family, the people that are residing in this area that's supposed to be yours is hell. This sucks. Hating your life, you know? This is the inner child feeling the archetypal devil, being ruled by the devil. But the healing aspects of the devil, of this card, and the idea, it's an illusion of being trapped. And as a child, now remember we're thinking about this as archetypal. As a child, no. I mean, you couldn't just escape your reality, right? Like that was your reality, you're a kid. You can't drive a car. You can't, you can't do a lot of things. You can't sign a paper. You were illegal to be independent. But as looking at the energy and the archetypal symbology of this is that you do grow up. You do eventually come into the wheel of fortune, the wheel of life. You do eventually move out of childhood into adulthood, freedom. Eventually you're going to be able to drive a car and fucking move out of the house. I moved out when I was 17, so yeah. As soon as I was able to, I got out of there. So yeah, I mean, eventually freedom is right there at your doorstep. It's just a matter energetically of changing the perspective and realizing that everything changes. This placement of the East and the West embodies this Gemini feeling, this wheel of time, the swing that I talk about all the time. And those of us that have kept our inner child as intact as possible do really well in the arts and flow arts and dance and movement, Tai Chi, moving this energy back and forth in our bodies to be able to balance it. Part of Gemini, the mantra of Gemini is, I see my other self. And in the waning of that self, I grow and glow. It's the union. In esoteric astrology, we're using these constellations and planets to free ourselves from the restraints. We're using them to show us as magicians that this is a perspective, and learning how to take that perspective to find freedom from it. So, take those blinders off. Talk to your inner child. Tell them it's all right. You're free. Bring back that play. Play with hula hoops. hacky sacks and plastic swords and instruments and fire. Play with the elements and connect with your higher self and be the best you can be. So thank you so much, in love and light. Don't forget about the links in the description below. It's a surprise. Clicking on it helps me out. Buying it helps us out a little bit more. I have my link tree that has all of my links on it. I've got spiritual texts available on Amazon. I've got a podcast that's way out of date that I'm working on. And yeah, I've got a Patreon account too, so that's super cool. So check it all out. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. Take care.